Sit down, grab a drink, and get ready to go on an amazing ride inside the human body. Watch how top athletes use the human body to its ultimate potential, muscling their way up sheer rock cliffs, pushing their skeletons to the breaking point.
I just felt a pop, and it just buckled.
Exploring the limits of endurance. Using their minds to overcome exhaustion and pain.
You can look out and you can think, you know, I could die out here. But if you put the pain on top of that, it's not bearable anymore.
Now, new imaging technology allows us to see what we've never seen before. Inside a living masterpiece of muscle and bone. Only human? Wait and see. Humans, each of us an example of what is perhaps nature's most perfect machine. But what does perfection look like? High-performance athletes can give us a glimpse from the outside. Beauty, though, is more than skin deep. To see the human machine in all its perfection, we have to look inside. A man going for an MRI scan at a hospital. It happens every day. But this time, it's different. He's actually a model for a truly spectacular anatomy lesson. These images are virtual dissections of the living body, allowing us to see just what intricate creatures we really are. The human body, its terrain is immense. This is the man leading the expedition of our own inner space, scientist and artist, Alexander Tsiaras. He's not a doctor, but an explorer mapping our body's architecture. And like any explorer, he uses the most sophisticated tools on his voyage of discovery.
The technologies that allow us to see that kind of work at that detail are cutting-edge new scanning techniques that allow you to look at very, very small objects in very high resolution. I mean, some of these objects are about the size of a grain of rice. We actually scan the inside of the objects, and this is a revolution in understanding our own development.
What you're seeing is not animation. These images come from real people, the inside architecture of real people, of all shapes, sizes, and ages. It all began with an unlikely volunteer, a murderer. Meet Joseph Jernigan, hands down the most studied killer in the history of the world. He stayed on death row for 12 years in Texas before his number came up when he was executed in 1993 by lethal injection. But the National Library of Medicine had a new future in mind for Jernigan. They froze his body and cut it into 1,871 deli-thin slices, each photographed in super high detail and put into giant computers.
It's very difficult to actually go out and just scan a person at that high resolution. Whenever you scan a person, first of all, you don't want to give a living person that much radiation, nor do you want to cut them and put them back together, and it just doesn't quite work.
Jernigan's body was then pieced back together, digitally, allowing Alexander Tsiaras to draft our inner architecture. But then he adds details from living people using MRI scans and other imaging techniques. Later, all those images are assembled using powerful computers. With the aid of scientific illustrators, Alexander Tsiaras brings the human body into full view.
When you look at Da Vinci or any kind of great anatomical rendering, they were quantifiably accurate, but they were beautiful. So what we want to do is bring these new technologies so that you see the first quantifiable accuracy, but we also want to make them really beautiful so that they last the test of time, as all these other great artworks have done.
A man's skeleton in flight, showing in detail the 206 bones that make up our internal scaffolding. The complexity of our neural network, 90,000 miles of densely compacted neurons that let us sense the world. More than 600 muscles, the sinewy tissue that animates our lives.
It's sort of like God's puzzle, you know, the complexity of all these systems that are communicating to each other all the time. So perfectly organized a structure, it's impossible not to marvel at it. This will be spectacular.
And it all begins with a man and a woman. Their union brings sperm to egg, conception. A single cell begins an incredible journey, dividing over and over. Even though it's microscopic, we can still explore this tiny universe where a new life is evolving. The brain and the nervous system, the heart and lungs, and the skeleton, where at 6 months, all the bones are in place, connected by whisper-thin ligaments even Alexander's images cannot see. After 9 months of development, everything has come together to create a new life. A new person enters the world. But the growing up has just begun. Our bodies strengthen and develop to carry us through the rest of our lives. But how much can a body take? The answer? A lot.
You ready?
Okay.
Go.
To find our limits, look under the skin of high-performance athletes. Come and see how each body system, muscle, bone, blood, and brain work together to take athletic bodies to extremes. They show us what we are all made to do with the most amazing piece of architecture ever. Muscles, they are the incredible engines under our skin, carrying us down the street and even straight up sheer cliffs.
There are 600 muscles in this system, and they work in combination to get you through every day of your life. You have all these different kinds of muscles that are enormous and also small, but they're beautiful.
But guess what? It's not size that always counts. While some sports demand big muscles, others, like rock climbing, do not.
As soon as I see a muscly guy, my goal is to make him dance like a ballerina by the end of the day.
Upstate New York, cliffs of solid rock, drop-offs above, hard boulders below. Meet Mike and Julie, local school teachers. Long before getting married, they were each wedded to rock climbing.
It's your lifestyle. It's not so much your sport. It's you come up, you know, go through some terror, some abject terror, and then you come down at the end of the day. It's just what you do.
Today's climb, straight up the rocky outcrops, soaring hundreds of feet in the air.
And this I would consider a harder climb. It's not climbed very much. It's got a large overhang at the top.
So I'm gonna anchor in, Mike.
You're never more focused than when you're really needing to do it right. If you don't climb well, if you fall, you can get really hurt.
Making that climb takes brains, working closely with brawn. And that's here in Mike's forearm muscles. Deceptively simple in concept, but complex in design, muscles provide us with gravity-defying abilities.
Look at all these beautiful muscle fibers. Look at the muscle fibers, you know, that are controlling everything from a tiny blink to a smile. And then you start to see that multiplied over and over and over again thousands of tiny little thread strands that all get bundled together, that all become perfect muscle systems.
Mike has begun the ascent, each move requiring an amazing unseen dance of muscle tension and release. Our muscles are designed only to pull, not push. Most are skeletal, muscles connected to our bones by tendons, dense connecting fibers acting like rubber bands. Stimulated muscles pull on our bones, creating movement. Muscles are all over our bodies. They move our eyes, letting us focus, wink and blink. And muscles in our hands and fingertips permit us to grasp even the smallest object.
A climber, for example, what will happen is as they grab on, they're only pulling, and all this contraction will allow you to ratchet yourself up a mountain cliff.
We decide when and how to move these skeletal muscles, even if we're not always aware of it.
You just make these kind of minute changes in your body position to keep you in balance, but you're not really aware that you're changing your body position. The whole thing just works and you keep climbing. Your entire nervous system is dedicated towards keeping you in balance and keeping you moving forward.
But then there are other muscles we do not control voluntarily, like those in our digestive tract, where we have a host of automatic muscles.
Like in the stomach, you have those 3 types of muscle, and they crush all the food. In the smaller intestine, you only have 2 muscles, one that are very long and one that are circular. So like a snake, it'll crush, and then it'll elongate and push it along.
Climbing, Mike!
Climb on!
Mike is now halfway up, having laid the safety lines for Julie's rope. Julie will now take the lead for the climb.
One of the types of climbing that Julie excels at is very desperate climbing, where the protection is marginal and it's very, very hard and it's very committing. So it's difficult for me sometimes to watch her doing that stuff.
Julie's delicate and compact body seems more like a dancer's than a strong climber's.
Up rope.
Her frame is small, her muscles don't bulge.
When I started climbing, I had developed these great big muscles. And I used to admire them, and, and I have pictures of myself back then, so it was really fun. It felt like a teenage boy for a while, you know, and anyone who would look, I'd show them my muscles.
It's an interesting question. Are bigger muscles always better? Not necessarily. To work hard, muscles need oxygen and need to release microscopic waste. In fact, they increase in size during exercise because blood is streaming through them via blood vessels. But when the level of stress is extreme, muscles can't be supplied quickly enough. Fatigue hits hard.
There'll be a very strong male, very muscular, and he'll assume he's going to just do pull-ups and he's just going to crank through every move and he's just going to grab the holds and grab the next big one. By halfway up the pitch, his forearms are all swollen with deoxygenated blood and he can't hold on any longer and gives up.
It's not always how big your muscles are, it's how you use what you've got. This may give women an advantage over men when it comes to some physical challenges.
Climbing isn't about how big your muscles are. It's about strength-to-weight ratio for one. You only need to take your own body weight, and I've seen that it's actually better to have smaller muscles.
One theory even suggests smaller muscles might actually be more resistant to tiring out. Look deep to the smallest pipes funneling oxygen-carrying red blood cells through the muscles, capillaries. Muscles flexing a lot suffer for it. The contraction crushes capillaries, muscles become oxygen-starved, waste builds up. But women with smaller muscles exert less force. Their capillaries are crushed less. Translation, muscle endurance. It has brought Julie to the moment of truth, the overhang.
What you have to do is actually you have to grab a hold and pull away from it. So you're leaning way out into the open space. What you naturally would want to do is sort of cling closely to the rock, but you have to pull out.
Julie is 150 feet up. In her fight against gravity, it looks like she is just using her arm muscles. think again.
Because you're using your larger back muscles here, you actually feel more secure than you would if you were clinging very tightly. So that sort of motion of pulling out on something and then really committing to that void and then bringing yourself up is really a wonderful movement. How you get to the top is more important than getting to the top, actually. I like knowing that I was in a very precarious situation where a lot of people would be scared and I'm not. So I seek that out.
Lack of fear aside, it is Julie's muscle power that has gotten her to the top. Coming up next, the human skeleton. Ever wonder what bones look like up close? How about inside? Our bones can take a lot, but even they have breaking points. Our skeleton, the superstructure of our existence. It defines our shape and dictates movement.
It does so many things. It has tremendous mobility and elegance as it moves. It has all these elements of protection as well.
But what if our body lets us down?
I just felt a pop, and it just buckled.
I didn't give up because it's just not in my nature to.
Scrimmage for the New York Liberty, one of the WNBA's best teams. The first game of the season is only weeks away. And guard Becky Hammon, one of the Liberty's best players, is on the sidelines with an injury. Becky has been playing in the WNBA since 1999. She's not big, but she's known for her smart, scrappy play.
I do some things that people are a little shocked and awed at because I'm so little. But I look at the whole thing kind of like a chess game. And that's my mind getting my body to do what I want it to do.
But sometimes her body does not do what she wants it to. June 26, 2003, Madison Square Garden.
I remember that day specifically. Wasn't in the game for more than 10 seconds. I had grabbed a rebound, was heading down the court, and just went to stop. It was really nothing. I mean, I really just stepped out to stop and throw a pass, and it just buckled. It felt like my knee had stayed in one spot, and then, you know, my femur had just kicked over my tibia and went out to the sideline and came back. It felt like it had stretched about 2 feet from what it was supposed to do.
A high-performance athlete out with a potentially catastrophic injury. What had happened? The answer can be found in Becky's skeleton.
I mean, the skeleton is amazing. I mean, it provides support. You've got these magnificent vertebrae, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, almost like an architectural structure as it distributes more and more weight. It has tremendous mobility and elegance as it moves.
Our bones give us the proportions of our faces, the length of our stride, the reach of our hands. The adult human skeleton has 206 bones. Each is perfectly designed to work in conjunction with other bones. Layers of calcium and protein bundle together with a center that looks as delicate as lace.
And inside those bundles, you have in the center these beautiful little arches called trabeculae, which are small bone that allow it to be very light, but also very powerful, very much like an egg carton. It's not very big, but because of the way it's constructed, it can really protect those eggs.
Bones, though, are only one part of our frame. To become a skeleton, they have to be held together, and that is the job of the dense tissue connecting the joints, ligaments. All combined, this amazingly delicate and durable structure can give us the dexterity for gentleness, while it is twice as strong as granite. How can Becky's strongest bones simply collapse while she's running down the court? Look closely. It is not Becky's bones breaking, it's something else.
I just felt the pop. But I thought surely I must have just twisted it or just caught it. I thought no way could this be an ACL.
ACL for anterior cruciate ligament. Becky's bones are fine. It is what's holding them together, a ligament that is ruptured. The ACL is one of the crucial tethers her whole knee joint hangs on. Under the right conditions, if you twist it too hard, it will snap.
And the anterior cruciate ligament makes sure that these two bones do not separate, but basically you turn really hard, you're going to rip one of those ligaments.
ACL injuries are common, but can still derail a career.
Perfect. As long as you're not having pain, we're good.
Becky has undergone surgery and embraced a strength training program. It has taken months.
And you wake up every day and you go to rehab and you stay determined and you stay focused on what you need to do.
So is the problem just in the ligaments? Maybe not. We are bipedal. We stand up to move. Walking upright made our pelvic bones widen a bit, helping us balance and stay off all fours. Ordinary, everyday activities don't really put our skeletons to the test. But impact sports like basketball not only test our joints, they test our evolution. And unfortunately for Becky, evolution is not on her side. Women have 8 times as many ACL injuries as men. Why? Apart from size, there is little difference between the skeleton of a man and a woman. The one exception is the pelvis. Physiologists have a measurement for the difference. It's called the Q angle. Q as in quadriceps, angle as in how the knee lines up with the pelvis. A man's Q angle is 10 degrees, while a woman's stretches farther at 15 degrees. It's because her pelvis is wider. The result? Pressure on the knees.
Their hips are optimized for childbirth, and that forces the hips to be further out, which puts a lot more pressure on the turn whenever they play these kinds of really tough sports.
Being a woman, are we at a disadvantage physically? Yeah, I would say so. That's just the way we are built. But having the ability to reproduce and carry a baby, that's a great blessing. You know, you play with the cards you're dealt with.
Luckily, Becky Hammond's cards seem to be improving. It's been 10 arduous months of recovery since Becky's injury. Her successful return to the game is tonight.
A lot of adrenaline pumping tonight. I play hard, I play with a lot of passion. That's just in my nature, that's how I am.
And she does it. Becky and the New York Liberty lose this outing, but she goes on to record her best season ever. Up next, the human body as energy machine. What makes us go? Food, water, air, and the desire to overcome even the most chilling odds. Muscles and bone, they need energy to move. Here's the human power reactor: heart, lung, and digestion. Together they produce and transport hundreds of millions of energy-boosting molecules.
Vast numbers of chemical and biological actions that are happening in your body every second. It's like sitting at the bottom of Niagara Falls and trying to count all the droplets.
All in balance to keep us strong and safe.
We never realized it was so dangerous until you've actually been to that extreme and seen what the body goes through and how quickly it happens. That's, I guess, the scariest thing.
The Gippsland Lakes, Australia's largest waterway. Tranquil and beautiful until you jump in.
About that. For the media, we'll try and inform you about all the things that will be coming up.
Meet the Van Weiss siblings, John and Tammy, world-renowned marathon swimmers.
This is safe, the temperature drops 10 degrees, what do you do? Keep going or?
Yep, absolutely.
Tomorrow she will try for a new world swimming record, a 25-mile test of stamina, 3 miles farther than the English Channel.
Okay, as you can see, the swim will start at the jetty here in Bensdale. It'll head down through the Mitchell River, through the Silk Jetties.
The Gippsland Lakes straddle the coast of Victoria, Australia. Tammy's endurance swim will take her through treacherous currents and frigid water that will drop below 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
There's potential for you to get hypothermia, is that right?
Hypothermia is a very real risk, and obviously that's why we look, you never...
So there's no guarantees that you can make this? You shouldn't assume anything, should you?
You shouldn't assume anything.
No.
Cold is the enemy of anyone in the water, but it's especially so for the marathon swimmer.
Other than probably Rex and Tammy, they're the only
Tammy is only 36, but has already clocked enough miles in the open water to circle the globe 1.5 times. And she's broken 5 world records in swimming. It's not your average hobby.
There are many different ways to challenge yourself and get your kicks. Go. She's going to do it no matter what. We want to, make sure she does it and doesn't hurt herself.
With younger brother John coaching, Tammy has been training for months. Endurance building is the key. To get from one end of the lakes to another will take an estimated 48,000 freestyle strokes.
I often think about what it takes the human body to do just to do a swimming stroke. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment when you really break it down and think about it.
What it takes is coordination of heart and lung. The blood-filled, oxygen-producing lungs. Intakes, vents, and pumps fill and empty them out every 5 seconds with the oxygen that is then delivered to the bloodstream. Oxygen fuels our muscles. In tiny pockets lining the lungs, the oxygen meets up with the bloodstream. Carrying it to every corner of the body are red blood cells. Tammy has more than 28 trillion coursing through her veins right now. The heart. Under normal circumstances, it contracts 70 times a minute, 100,000 times a day, 2.5 billion times over a lifetime. A woman's heart is smaller than a man's, but on average, hers will last longer, in the pool and in life. It is a pump station pushing red blood cells and their oxygen molecules into an immense array of arteries, veins, and capillaries. All laid out in one of nature's most efficient designs, tributaries. Time for Tammy to see if months of endurance training has paid off.
Do we need tickets to get on this bus?
Yes, please.
Ocean tides determine when she begins. Unfortunately, that's at 3 a.m. Water temperature, 55 degrees.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for coming down.
The cold's going to be the big factor. Fresh water always feels colder than salt water, so I think it's going to be a hard swim.
We lose heat more quickly in water than in air. Petroleum jelly will help keep her skin from touching the cold water. But the most effective tool against the cold is the heat that comes from her moving muscles. And when body temperature falls below 95 degrees, hypothermia will set in. It takes more than oxygen to power muscle. We need fuel. After food is chewed, it drops in our stomach. The hydrochloric acid in here can dissolve bone. The food is decomposed and pushed into the intestines.
The digestive system, it curves and curves and curves so that you can actually create more time for something to go through, for you to have more opportunity to absorb more of the enriched foods.
The result? Carbohydrates. When combined with oxygen, rocket fuel for muscles.
3, 2, 1, we're off!
It will sustain Tammy, at least for a while.
Your body, first of all, goes really, really cold, and it's almost like somebody's stabbing you with a knife. It's that sort of a searing pain.
It is only an hour in, and Tammy is already experiencing hypothermia. Her body temperature is quickly dropping. But her muscles are moving, creating heat, and her blood is taking that heat to where it is most needed.
I'll start to go, okay, fingers, are you still responding? And I'll try and sort of bend them, and I'll realise that they won't work. They'll actually be frozen stiff in the swimming position.
The brain keeps all of the blood on the inner system so that it supports the important parts, your heart, your digestive system, and your brain, and it shuts it off to your skin, which can endure colder temperatures.
It's the 2-hour mark of the swim. Tammy is starting to deplete the energy she received from the food she ate earlier. But hope is not lost. She has a backup.
Yes, females do have a secret weapon. Am I allowed to talk about that? We have more body fat, which gives us more flotation. So we naturally just bob along the top like a cork. And also the body fat insulates us, protects us from the cold.
There you go, young lady.
Tammy has been stocking up on junk food. Her body weight is now roughly 30% fat. But don't try that at home. We are victims of evolution. Long ago, we needed energy reserves simply for survival. For those of us who don't do endurance sports, it can be a curse. But for Tammy and John, little fat and cold water is a potentially deadly combination. 11 years ago, John almost died trying to swim the English Channel.
I got about 6 hours in and started sinking under the boat, and I actually suffered from hypothermia.
He almost died swimming the channel. If somebody hadn't jumped in the water, pulled him back on board the boat and given him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, he wouldn't be here today.
Body fat is everything. If you don't have body fat on you, the cold can get you quickly. I'm confident we can do this, but I know, things can go wrong.
It is 3 hours into the swim. Air temperature is below freezing. Tammy is struggling against hypothermia.
It's just a painful period, and it's quite an important stage, because if she goes through a low and she lets the cold get to it, it can amplify even worse in her head. These next couple of hours will be quite hard. Like I said, the honeymoon part's over.
You're fighting the mind demons. Your muscles are searing and saying why you're doing this. And it's a bit scary in a sense, because it's almost like your mind is still functioning, but your body isn't reacting.
It'll get warmer down there, and the sun's starting to get some punch. All right, so just hang in there.
Body fat is extremely useful as an energy source. It is the key for the body to run more fuel efficient.
This is how women are coming to dominate the world of marathon swimming. Tammy has trained her metabolism to better exploit her body fat.
We were given more natural body fat so that we could survive for longer periods of time and still have the babies to keep the species going. And here I'm using that same body fat to swim.
Stroke after exhausting stroke, Tammy's energy system powers her through this test of endurance. For Tammy, after 10 grueling hours, the end is in sight. She is the first to swim the Gippsland Lakes of Australia.
It's just tremendous. I couldn't have asked for anything better than this. It's just awesome.
Endurance is not just about physical power, it's about brain power. Coming up next, one of the world's most extreme tests. Muscle, bone, heart, and lung, all meaningless without this. Your brain, it's everything. Want to run a desert marathon? Your brain coordinates every part of your body. Every move you make. Everything you feel.
Temperature in the car is saying 121 right now, so we'll probably get to around 130 or so, 135, by the heat of the day.
Pain is for preservation. It's to protect you.
You're depressed, you're a little overwhelmed by the distance. So if you put the pain on top of that, it's not bearable anymore.
And if you don't respond to that, then you're going to suffer the consequence.
The brain's mission? Your survival. Death Valley Desert, one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Believe it or not, some people come here to run an endurance race. Kiel's Badwater Marathon, one of the world's most brutal physical and mental tests. Competitors come from all over to race Badwater, like Francesca Conte. She's a professional endurance runner, but she's never done this before.
It's the longest distance that I've ever run. Certainly the most extreme conditions.
Great.
Runners start at the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere. Then it's 135 miles of road and 8,500 feet of elevation to the end. The human body is not designed for this, and her brain will be letting her know that. Her task, ignore the pain. That means ignoring her brain.
I've got 10 words for all of you. Be safe, be fair, be legal, and have a good time.
This is just something that I would like to finish. I'm hoping that my body will just not fall apart at mile 100 and just crumble to dust.
The human body can endure a lot, but this, it will take everything these bodies have, all systems working together. And here is where it all comes together, the brain. 100 billion nerve cells, trillions of synapses, a wrinkly mass of tissue that defines our world. And it is where sensation is processed. 90,000 miles worth of neurons are squeezed into the human body's neural network. Nerve strands reach muscle, skin, even bone. Hardwired to the brain, sending messages, conveying the world through our senses. Pleasure, pain, sound, smell, and especially sight.
70% of all of your sensory nerve endings are concentrated in these two golf ball size objects called your eyes, which means that your principal input of information really is vision.
Eyes lead motion. Sight begins when light bounces off objects and hits the surface of our eyes, the cornea. The image is bent into focus, then shoots across the eye's interior, where it's projected along its back wall, the retina. Light-sensitive nerve cells transform the image into a chemical and electrical message, shooting into the optic nerve, the straightaway to the back of the brain. At 250 feet per second, the signals then fire down the spinal cord, triggering the muscles to perform. Millions of sensory inputs let us put one foot in front of the other. Years of training have resulted in the creation of this endurance machine. Francesca runs and wins 100-mile races across the United States. It is mind over ultra marathon.
You have to train your brain not to think at all about the distance. It's not your body that's moving you, it's your mind.
But Badwater is quickly turning into Francesca's biggest test.
From every race I learn something. The more extreme the conditions, the more you can learn where your limits are or maybe where they're not. You can look out and you can think, you know, I could die out here.
6 hours into the race, the temperature 130 degrees.
Okay.
Francesca is moving, but her brain is telling her to stop. Actually, her brain is screaming in its own way. It's called pain.
These races ultimately are about dealing with pain.
Good job. V8, I'm not sure I've ever seen her sit down and let us do things like that. I am. I'm going to put the ice on her leg.
Yeah, my legs.
Okay.
For now, it seems Francesca is losing the battle against pain.
You're trying not to think about how hard this is, how painful it is.
She is fighting an evolutionary response from command control, her brain. Our bodies can respond to pain immediately by muting it. Many nerves make chemicals that actually act like morphine. If the pain continues, the brain's pain dampening isn't enough. The body is in real trouble.
Its real job is to maintain an equilibrium. And you have these mechanisms that are telling you equilibrium is thrown off. Things are just not running properly. And if you don't respond to them, then you're going to suffer the consequence.
It was horrible. Last night was just horrible. With the heat, my system just shut down. I couldn't digest. I couldn't really, do anything. There was some crying. There was some cursing.
She was never gonna quit.
No.
No.
I thought about it, but I didn't quit.
The backs of Francesca's legs are starting to blister from sunburn. Her stride is down to a crawl. She's on the verge of quitting.
My feet have blisters all over the place. I try and fight to the pain. The problem is that sometimes you're also tired on top of it. You're depressed. You're a little overwhelmed by the distance or how far you have to go. So if you put the pain on top of that, it's not bearable anymore.
How you doing? Thank you. This is Francesca Conte, number 32.
Francesca hits a wall.
How are you? She needs some attention.
The race doctor schedules a stop at a nearby hotel to check on her.
I just couldn't move all of a sudden. I couldn't put one foot in front of the other.
You can drain underneath a little bit, and that's not going to cause her any pain. The good news is you're not going to be pounding on your toes. You're not going to be going downhill.
Right.
You're 5 hours
All right.
from the end. You're 5 hours, and you've got 12 hours to do it.
I'm not sure I can be in pain for.
Once again, Francesca summons the reserves to go on.
You know.
He
I
thinks
can
it's
try.
5. You're 3 out, and you're 4 up the mountain.
It's gonna take me longer than 4.
Okay.
But, I can try. I just can't guarantee that.
Men and women feel pain in the same way,
Take a shower.
but men seem to be able to suppress it better, deadening it with waves of the morphine-like chemicals from the brain. But that's not always true. There is one time when a woman's ability to deaden pain fires up: childbirth. When she needs it most, she musters an amazing amount of pain suppressants. Over her life, a woman's brain may actually be trained to live with pain, which may explain why women do so well in endurance competitions.
Childbirth is something that women are instinctively tuned to go through. You're resigned to endure pain. You can use it to your advantage. You can use it to say, this is just something that is. I don't have a choice. I will just get through it.
And here in Death Valley, it may also explain why Francesca does not quit the Badwater Marathon.
Death Valley really gives you a sense of how small and insignificant you are. It gives you a certain sense of being humbled.
After 135 miles of pain, sweat, and tears, Francesca climbs the final rise to take 20th place out of 72 starters.
Awesome.
40 hours ago, Francesca Conte started out to take on the desert and also take on herself. And she has won.
When I started up the mountain, I thought, what? That's pretty cool that I can actually finish this thing. I feel good now. I'm ready to sleep and eat and get these shoes off my feet, which will be the greatest thing ever. So I feel good.
The human body, it can be so delicate, but those who are forever pushing the limits of the body's potential show us just how powerful and resilient it can be. It is what's inside that counts. But how we use what's inside counts even more. Are we only human? No. We are amazingly human.